Now it's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation.
What are you people? On dope?
Where you can toke.
I inhale frequently.
Or you can talk.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
Or you can toke and talk.
10 federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
While we talk about toke on Toker Talk Radio.
So, by the way, when it comes to pot, if you're 40 years old, you live in a log cabin in Oregon, you got 12 giant pot plants in your backyard, have a ball.
Live from beautiful Portland, Oregon at Rolla J Studios.
Hey, this is great. Just not cannabis.
Plus your calls live at 971-533-7111.
They're walking on their pants with their cap on backwards, listening to Enema Man and Snoopy Poop Dog.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel? Gateway theory doesn't work. It's a reality.
Holland, is it real? Don't tease me.
We're locking up people that take a couple of puffs of marijuana, and the next thing you know, they got 10 years.
And now, here's your host, the guru of ganja graphics, the sultan of sativa statistics, and the worst nightmare of a reefer-mad prohibitionist. A polite, perspicacious, productive pothead with a propensity for PowerPoint. Radical Russ Belville.
All right, good day, folks. Welcome back. It's Toker Talk Radio coming to you live from the lobby of St. Paul Hotel in St. Paul, Minnesota, where it's freezing cold outside, but got ourselves a vodka cranberry here in the lobby. Got a paper pen to go step outside, so things aren't so bad. Oh no! We got Brian the Red back in the studio playing video games again. Are you, Brian?
Oh, just a little bit.
See what happens when we put him in the captain's chair?
Oh, I could be doing much worse.
That's true. I got to hold my tongue. So, I understand while I'm here, while I'm freezing out here in St. Paul, it actually got nice and warm in Portland.
Yeah, it's sunny out there. It's spooky.
I think this makes up for me missing snow apocalypse the other weekend when I was out in SoCal.
Yeah, that's payback. No,
hey, folks, I got to tell you, the folks here in Minnesota with Minnesota NORML have really got a great thing going on. Randy Quast is their executive director. He's recently elected to the national board of NORML. So Minnesota's got some pull at the national level as well. But man, is he putting his money where his mouth is. If you don't know about Randy Quast, he was a successful businessman in the trucking industry and a cannabis consumer, and he never had any reason to be an activist, was never involved in it, until one day he was ripped off. He had a robbery. Somebody tried to rob him, as burglary, technically. He wasn't there. And they tried to haul out his safe. Now, in his safe, he told this story last night, in his safe he had like 3 ounces of weed. Because he's a successful businessman, right? He doesn't leave weed and bongs and pipes and papers all around his, nice house, right? When guests are coming over, right? So he's got all that stuff locked away in his safe. And the guy, whoever tried to rip off his house, ripped off his safe and kind of dragged it out into the yard before they got away. So when Randy called the cops to go, my house has been burgled. The cops were like, oh, apparently they were after what was in this safe. So what's in the safe? Randy's like, well, that's personal. It's private. It's none of your business. And so, of course, the cops went and got a drug dog to sniff the safe. And then the next thing you know, he's busted for the 3 ounces. And that galvanized him. That changed him. That made him want to fight this prohibition, because then he was put under probation and had to P-test and all these kind of things. And so he's kind of dedicated himself now, and a lot of his finances, his financial abilities here, his money, to wanting to fight this prohibition. He recently gave a $10,000 donation to NORML. That happened just in December at the Key West seminar. Last night at dinner, he was talking about how Minnesota NORML has funded a $40,000 economic study of legalization in Minnesota, how they have a $100,000 operating budget, how they've just hired 2 full-time staff members. Most NORML chapters don't have paying positions. They've got 2. we'll be meeting with them. We're having dinner tonight with the Minnesota NORML board, so I'll get to meet a lot of these people. And I got to tell you, folks, if legalization is going to break through in the Midwest, it's going to happen here in Minnesota. They've got a strong progressive tradition in this state. And despite the opposition that you see here to medical marijuana sometimes, from their political class, this can really happen. And Randy and I were talking about how Minnesota could possibly be the first state that goes directly to legalization. Doesn't go through the step of medical, goes directly to legalization. All right, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, I'll give you a quick introduction to our next segments, where we've got speeches from Keith Stroup, the founder of NORML. And then at the bottom of the hour, we'll have time for my speech that I gave at the Minnesota History Museum just yesterday. You're listening to Toker Talk Radio on 420radio.org. I'm Radical Russ. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
I'm Radical Russ Belville, and I want to thank you for listening to 420 Radio. We couldn't survive without you and our sponsors, and I'd like you to check out one of our prime sponsors, the National Cannabis Coalition. I've been working with NCC since June of 2012, and I'm proud to be part of the team they have assembled. National Cannabis Coalition is building the partnerships with reformers, lawmakers, and industry we need to be successful. Visit the National Cannabis Coalition website at nationalcannabiscoalition.com or the easier-to-remember ncc420.com. That's where you'll get the exclusive first look at my radical rants, as well as informative articles from the nation's top cannabis pundits. Visit ncc420.com today, and if you have your phone handy, text Russ to 420-420 to support NCC and 420 Radio. It's a free text message that helps us help you end adult marijuana prohibition. Learn more at ncc420.com, and thanks for supporting independent marijuana legalization public radio. You can get 420 Radio on the go with the TuneIn Radio app for all mobile platforms. Go to rad-r.us/420tunein, or just click the TuneIn Radio icon below the live radio feed on 420radio.org.
All right, folks, welcome back. It's 8 after the hour, and we're going to go right now to Keith Stroup at the Minnesota History Museum last night in the exhibit American Spirits, Rise and Fall, Prohibition. Take it away, Keith.
Keith Stroup, the founder of NORML and the current board member and fellow board member, as I was fortunate to recently be elected to the national board. So anyway, I have all the respect of the world for Keith, and it was at my low point that I traveled to Portland, Oregon, when NORML just happened to be having a national conference, because I was a successful businessman, father of four, and many of you maybe heard my story over and over, but I just happened to have a little bit too much of this non-toxic herb locked in my safe, in my locked home, and somebody busted into the home and trying to drag the safe out my backyard, which goes uphill. The neighbor saw him and started yelling, and he freaked, and he left the safe in the middle of the yard and he ran. And I came home from dinner. I thought my neighbor died. There were police cars all over the place. So I have always been my life the most discreet cannabis user, just put your stuff away. said I was private, and they said, well, we think it's drugs, we call the dogs in, but the weird thing is that night, like I must have had 12 cops in and out of my house that night, back and forth, and so they end up taking the safe, and I've never been a criminal before, so I'm here now, it's 10 o'clock at night, what do? I wait till in the morning, and I call my big law firm on top of the IGS in Minneapolis, and say, here's what happened, and they said, we have a hard time even making this open that safe without letting you know, but let's talk to our criminal defense. And it was right about that time that I was in a rental home at the time, in the dining room, we set up as an office, and I don't know how they did it, but just out of my front yard came up, and they had the red dots going, and we came with 12 dogs scurrying around the house, and it was a big raid to get my 3 ounces of marijuana. So, and it was just like, it was just, you know, and then what they, you know, it's not only that, it's what happens to you afterwards, as anybody involved knows. I mean, they, you know, the search, they rip up, their ceiling tiles are down, personal belongings, and civil asset forfeiture, right? A nice brand new car that got towed away, and blah, blah, blah. I happened to be going through a divorce. Well, obviously my ex was that for the most, and so it was custody of her children, and there's just a lot of things involved with it. And so it's at that time I said, this is ridiculous. Minnesota, so-called decriminal state. You know, so long as you don't keep it less than an ounce and a half, and you don't buy it or sell it or grow it, you know, then it's not a felony. But if you ever buy or sell or grow or have a little bit more than an ounce and a half, they'll come SWAT style to your house to get you. And that's, I came back and organized with a lot of, with other groups here in Minnesota, and we formed Minnesota NORML. We just celebrated our 3rd year anniversary. We now have like over 3,500 members on our support. And so, you know, Minnesota NORML, the NORML means that, you know, first people that ought to have marijuana are those with a medical need, but you know, the best way to do that is make it legal for everybody. So anyway, now I'm going to go now to our guests. We start out with Keith Stroup.
This is one of the most impressive venues I have ever seen. I remember being up here in the 70s when we decriminalized a small amount and went out to help too many people. And I think somebody reminded me I was here in 99, but it was a group of hippies, which I also can understand. But it is wonderful to be in Minnesota this year because you folks are very close to being the first state in the Midwest to legalize marijuana. I've lived in Washington, D.C. for 48 years. I went out there in 1965 to go to Georgetown Law School. And that's where I first smoked marijuana. And I've been a regular marijuana smoker ever since. And I just want to say that I smoked Now, as much as and by the way, let me just briefly, for those of you who may not know, NORML has always been the marijuana smokers' lobby. We think there's absolutely nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults, and it's none of the government's business whether you smoke or why you smoke. But what I think is really interesting right now is to see the incredible change that's going on around this country. I mean, you all are aware that we have 20 states that have legalized medical use, as well as the District of Columbia. We have 2 states, Colorado and Washington, that have totally legalized the responsible use of marijuana. And I would guess in this year, in November, we'll add at least 2 states to the legalization list. In 2016, we'll add at least 4 additional states. And frankly, I don't see any way our opponents turn this back. And the reason is, we have finally won the hearts and minds of the majority of the American public. For the first time, when we founded NORML in 1970, Gallup poll had just done their first poll asking the question, how many Americans favor legalizing marijuana? Now it's interesting, prior to 69, they didn't even think it was important enough to ask the damn question. Well, we had 12% support and 88% opposition. This past year, that same Gallup poll showed 58% support nationwide for legalizing marijuana for all adults. So what I want to stress to you is, what's important as we move forward is that we demonstrate in states like Colorado and Washington initially that we can do this in a responsible manner, because 86% of the public do not smoke marijuana. Only about 14% of us smoke. Now, for those of us who smoke, it's easy. Of course, you don't want to be arrested. You know, of course, you support a program. But we don't win the damn issue with 14%. So what's really crucial is that we pay attention to the 86% who don't smoke. They're not pro-marijuana, they are anti-marijuana prohibition. And that's what we need to keep our eye on. They are concerned about legitimate concerns that all of us have. They don't want to see a big spike up in adolescent marijuana use. Neither do I. I'm sure most of you don't either. I would also say that they're concerned about DUID. They're concerned that somehow there's going to be this onslaught of stolen drivers on the road. Where do they think we've been for that? So it's not like people start smoking because the law changed. We've been smoking all along. But it is important that we pay attention to those kinds of things. And so let's all keep that in mind as we go forward. We can't win this with just the smokers. We have to continue to have the good faith support of the non-smokers who understand that marijuana prohibition simply is a failed public policy. Now, when you get down to it, I never really thought this is largely about marijuana smoking. I mean, I literally, I started smoking 65, so I've been smoking 48 years now. I guess I'm a regular smoker. But I don't really think it's about marijuana smoking. It's about personal freedom. The government has no business coming into our homes knowing what books we read, what music we listen to, how we conduct ourselves in the privacy of our bedroom, or whether we drink alcohol or smoke marijuana when we relax in the evening. It's none of their damn business.
Oh, what a perfect ending point there. That's Keith Stroup at the Minnesota History Museum. When we come back, we'll talk for a little bit, and at the bottom of the hour, we'll have my speech from the Minnesota History Museum. But Hey, it's 20 after, and that means it's 4:20 in the Pacific time zone. And even though I'm in the Central time zone, my body clock is still on the Pacific time zone. So let's take a break. Back out into the cold, people.
If he said he swam to China, he would send you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Cannabis Outreach Collective is an alternative health and wellness option located in Gladstone, Oregon, that serves patients in the Portland area and beyond. We are a full-service alternative health and wellness collective accommodating patients with natural, organic, holistic, and homeopathic remedies, nutritional guidance, advice, education, and medical cannabis, fully in accordance with Oregon OMMP law. You can find out more about Cannabis Outreach Collective on Facebook at COC503 or by emailing cannabisoutreachcollective503@gmail.com or by telephone at 503-853-1319. Check out our menu on Weed Maps and visit Cannabis Outreach Collective today.
Marijuana, do you wanna? Mary, do you wanna tonight?
As marijuana goes mainstream, you need to be armed with the facts. Nobody can teach you better than Dr. Mitch Earlywine, Ph.D. You may know Dr. Mitch from his column in High Times magazine or his weekly appearance on the Russ Belville Show. Dr. Mitch is also the author of some of the best books on marijuana science, culture, history, and health, including Understanding Marijuana, Parents' Guide to Marijuana, Pot Politics, and more. Visit Amazon.com and search for Mitch Earlywine, that's EARLEYWINE, and order your books today. You can also contact Dr. Mitch by email at 420research@gmail.com.
I, Red Eye's Reggae Flashback, starring Brian the Red, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. on 420radio.org.
Yeah! Junior gang and be real. Pepper, pepper, pepper. How would them feel like? Come on!
Straight up, we set the fire, we blaze them and do it properly. Sonically, all we need is
soda. It is cold outside. It's definitely winter, folks.
Are you there, Russ? Did we lose you? Oh, think the call might have dropped. Hello, hello. You still? Oh, trying to get him back. Yeah, we're doing it live, people. This is Toker Talk Radio on 420radio.org. I'm Brian the Red, sitting in the studio here, trying to connect back to Russ, who's out in Minnesota, where it is cold, cold, cold. Let's try closing this and redial.
Come on, camera.
And are we there? Yes, I see you, Russ.
There we go. Yes, I just wanted to show people the St. Paul Hotel. I got out of range of the Wi-Fi, so it dropped the camera. But let's turn this back on. Switch camera. I don't know how much you got to see of me outside, but we'll switch the cameras and see what we get. Come on, there we go. All right, so we are here at the St. Paul Hotel, and this is, of course, the pull-in area, but pretty swanky place. I was hoping to see one of the doormen who wear the top hats. We have some sort of there's some sort of wrestling thing going on, so we have all sorts of these state wrestlers and other people in town. And here we are coming into the lobby. If we take a look, I think our temperatures are there. There we go. Tomorrow, 1 degree.
Woohoo!
At least it's positive, right?
Stay positive, Russ.
Stay positive, right? So, we've got the front lobby, the front hotel of the hotel here, people checking in. Like I mentioned, later tonight we'll be headed out to dinner with the folks from Minnesota NORML. They're putting on a nice dinner for us, and me and Randy will be hanging out. Neil Franklin from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, whose first name is Stanford. I learned that this weekend. It's like neither myself nor Keith and Neil go by our first names. I thought that was quite interesting. So it's a very, very nice hotel. This is kind of the waiting area, right? You can see just gorgeous carpets and chandeliers, pillars. This is way, way, way above my price grade. This is way above what I'm used to. You know, I'm usually doing these gigs. I'm staying at like, you know, the Knights Inn or one of these lousy, you know, rundown places. So it's kind of a nice change of pace. But a lot of that, you know, of course, has to do with Randy Quast. And you heard him tell a little of his story of how he got busted, you know, when someone busted into his place, you know, and that, I thought that was a very good story because it just goes to show that, you know, you can be a successful guy like Randy, run a multi-million-dollar business, and through no fault of your own, you know, if you're a cannabis consumer, through no fault of your own, you end up get wrapped into the system, you know, when they find the weed at your place. And, you know, I'm glad this has galvanized him. I'm glad that he has decided to take this and turn, you know, use all his money and his influence to try to make a change in Minnesota's laws. And, you know, we actually got some flack for throwing this event about the end of Prohibition from the folks that are trying to pass medical marijuana in Florida. In Minnesota. Some people who push medical marijuana bills, they seem to want to have it both ways. They oftentimes will say, you know, this is not about legalization. Oh, this is nothing to do about legalization. This is getting medicine to sick patients. This has nothing to do with legalization. But then when we try to run some sort of event to promote legalization, they get upset about us running it because it'll hurt their chances somehow. Wait a minute, I thought it had nothing to do with legalization. Is it a separate issue or is it not? If it's a separate issue, then we should be able to run with our issue, shouldn't we? That's what's frustrating to me. And this idea that, you know, I understand wanting to help the patients, and I understand wanting to get sick people their medicine. And I even understand saying that that's a separate issue, that that's a separate fight. I'm all for that. But you can't fight that fight and then expect the rest of us fighting the other fight to go on pause to wait for your fight. That's like saying, you know, don't worry about all those black kids getting, you know, stopped and frisked. Don't worry about, you know, 1 in 3 black men likely to see prison time in their lifetime. Don't worry about that for now. We've got to help sick people. If you try to help those guys, you know, that are getting caught up in the system, well, that'll hurt sick people. It's almost like a threat. You know, it's almost like, you know, holding someone out, you know, don't do anything or the sick person gets it, right? Don't try to fight for legalization or you're hurting the sick people. And I just won't accept that. I'm not going to put on pause my fight to help, you know, young people who are, you know, denied a chance at college because they got caught up with weed. I'm not about to stop my fight for growers who end up going to long prison terms because they were growing marijuana for some of those sick people. You know what I'm saying? It's okay to have a separate fight, but don't expect the people fighting the other fights to put it on hold in favor of your fight. If you really think medical marijuana is a separate issue, then you should be able to fight it as a separate issue, regardless of what people fighting for legalization are doing. All right, let's take a break here, and when we come back, we'll have my speech from the Minnesota History Museum last night on the end of Prohibition. You're listening to Toker Talk Radio live from St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm Radical Russ. Be right back.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
It's simply business. It's simply business. It's simply business, you know why they won't let us grow. It's simply business. It's simply business, you know why they won't let us grow. It's simply business. I'm a reefer smoking man.
Wood Pipe Smoke Shop and Speakeasy is your source for cannabis community gear in southern Wisconsin. Owners Brian and Tammy Wood are located in Kendall, just outside of Madison, and they've got everything for the smoking enthusiast, including a full assortment of pipes, water pipes, hookahs, bubblers, one-hitters, and so much more. They're open noon to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday and can help you with your detoxification therapies as well. Call 608-466-7473 or email woodpipes@yahoo.com for more information. That's 608-466-7473 or email woodpipes@yahoo.com. And as always, go pack go.
Support the Russ Belville Show. Text the word Russ to 420-420 and connect with the National Cannabis Coalition. You can also send $10 to the Russ Belville Show right from your smartphone. That's Russ to 420-420. You're listening to Radical Russ on the Russ Belville Show.
You can get 420 Radio on the go with the Ustream video app for Android and iPhone. Go to rad-r.us/420Ustream or just click the Ustream app icon for Android or iPhone below the live radio feed at 420.
Who would you rather your kids talk to about drugs? You? Or some guy? When your kids find out you've been lying to them about marijuana, who will they trust? Let's have a rational discussion about drug reform. Let's tax and regulate marijuana, restrict youth access, and create safer communities.
Hi there. My name is Russ Belville. I also go by the name Radical Russ on the air. Just real quick, how many people have heard my show? Yeah! Thank you. Thank you. And there's flyers all over if you want to try to follow the show. It's available on your iPhone, your Android, 5 days a week, 5 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Central Time, live. Like I said, 5 days a week, 2 hours a day. We interview people like Keith and Neil and all the experts in the community, growers, doctors, you name it, we've got it. So check it out. All right, so both Keith and Neil kind of explained how they ended up before you, what their stories were. I thought that was a pretty good idea that maybe I should tell you how I ended up here. I know it doesn't look like now, but I used to be a long-haired rock and roll musician. Halfway down the back. Played bass in a band, and I'd always been a pot smoker, just because I played bass in a band. I remember the first day I smoked pot, too. I had grown up, my dad was a drug addict and an alcoholic, and he got clean and sober when I was 12 years old, went back to college and became a drug and alcohol counselor. So I kind of saw both sides of it. I saw the addiction side of it when I was a little kid, and I saw the recovery side in my teenage years. So growing up, I'd never touched marijuana. I'd never even seen marijuana. In 1985, when I graduated high school, during the early 80s, about 55% of all high school seniors had at least tried marijuana. So that means in my class, a majority of the kids had tried pot, and I'd never even seen it. I was an honor roll kid, I was a straight A student, it just wasn't my thing. I was down behind the shop class sort of thing. But then I remember I was 22 years old, and I was at a gig, and one of the guitar players pulled out a joint and started passing it around, and I was kind of shocked. Oh no, I'm in a band with guys that do drugs. Oh no, they're going to try to force me to do drugs, man. I want to be cool and let's do drugs with these guys. What am I going to do? I was all stressed out, right? And so the joint's going to the guitar player, to the drummer, to the lead singer, and he goes to hand it to me, and I went, not right now, man, thanks. And I went, oh, okay. Okay. Where's the peer pressure? Where's the, oh, the big wuss? No, they didn't care. It's like, more for us, great. So they kept passing it around, and I'm watching them, and they, they got a little giggly. They got a little lightheaded, had some fun. But I didn't see anything crazy happen. And so about the fourth time that joint came around, I'm like, well, let's give that a try. Let's see what it's all about. So I grabbed the joint. This is drugs? Really, this is drugs. This is what you've been telling me, just say no to. This is what Nancy Reagan had to interrupt different strokes for. This? Really? Now, up to that point, age 16, I discovered alcohol, bottles and James wine coolers. I've been drinking for 6 years. I've gotten to myself, I was a pretty accomplished teenage and early young adult alcoholic. You saw Animal House, the movie. I was Pluto. I could drink more than you, I could drink faster than you, I could drink longer than you. But when I smoked that joint, I said, why should I? Realized I couldn't, play music forever. I had to kind of grow up and get a real job. And I moved out to Oregon. I was doing all this in Boise, Idaho, by the way. So I understand what it's like to be in a state where it's not too friendly. Well, Idaho, it is a crime to be high. Not possession. Under the influence in public, both the states of Wyoming and Idaho have laws that if you are under the influence in public, you're committing a misdemeanor for which you can get 6 months in the federal fine. Sale of paraphernalia in Idaho is a 9-year felony with $50,000 fine. But anyway, I left Idaho and I went to Oregon, and I got a job working in information technology. I'm a computer geek. So I found myself working for this place as a contractor, because if you work as a contractor, you don't have to P-test. And a lot of people are working like this. There's a whole legion of underemployed people who choose not to take drug tests, who are forced to take less salary, no benefits, no retirement, no nothing. Because they have a moral compulsion against giving their employer P. Can you imagine explaining that to Thomas Jefferson? If you had a time machine, and then you go explain to Thomas Jefferson how people need to get work by giving their employer some of their urine, you'd think you were smoking hashish, but anyway. So I worked this job as a contractor. I worked it for 2 years. I got glowing reviews. The people there loved me. It was like I found my home. I'm like, it almost sucked that I was a contractor getting paid a third of what I should be paid. And then the contract got bought out. I was going to lose my job, but the company loved me so much. They said, Russ, we'd like to hire you on permanent. We got a new place for you. We got a position for you. We'll hire you on permanent. Starting salary $69,000 a year. Get your own car. We'll give you a company car. We'll give you a company credit card. We'll give you a travel allowance. It was a dream come true. I couldn't believe it. Except for one thing. They wanted a drug test. And I thought, well, you know, I can suck it up once, man. I can do one drug test. I can drink cranberry juice and go without smoking pot for a while. But there was a problem. It wasn't a pee test, it was a hair test. And I was no longer the long-haired rock and roll musician I knew. I was shaving my head at the time because of vanity. And so I kind of laughed at the human resources person. I said, yeah, hair test. I don't have any hair. So, and then she said, straight face, oh, they'll find some hair. All right. So I start researching hair tests. I'm like, all right, how do you beat a hair test? Well, here's how you beat a hair test. Don't do drugs. That's about it. And by the way, just a little trivia fact, hair tests are discriminatory toward people of Mediterranean or African American descent because of the way their hair holds the metabolites longer than white folks' hair. Just like you should know that. But anyway, I figured out how do you beat a hair test? So I found that you can do these shampoos, you can do these treatments, and one of the parts is that you're supposed to soak your hair in white wine vinegar to loosen it up and to make it soft so that the shampoo could get into the cuticles. But the problem was I don't have hair to sink into white wine vinegar. Where are they going to get the hair from me? So I went to the shopping center and bought myself 30 gallons of white wine vinegar, filled up a bathtub with lukewarm white wine vinegar and soaked in it for 30 minutes, hoping that the shampoo would work. 30 minutes of white wine vinegar, stinking cold. Then I get out, put the shampoo and have it stand for another 30 minutes, all around my body here. Let's hope this works. Then it came the day to go do the drug test. Now, in a, I don't know, the universe's sense of irony, I was sent to a corporate business park that had 7 colonial-style buildings named after the founding fathers. I had to go take my drug test in the Jefferson Building, a freaking hemp farmer. I had to take my drug test in the Jefferson Building. So I go to the Jefferson Building, and there's a lady there. It's kind of like one of those, it was outfitted like one of those, at a construction site when they bring in the trailer, it's got the wood paneling, kind of temporary office. It was like that. Nothing about this said medical office. There's no diplomas on the wall, there's no exam tables or the little glass case with the tongue depressors, nothing. I'm like, all right, well, now here we are. She goes, what are you here for? Oh, I got to take my drug test. Oh, well, come into this room. So she leads me to this other room. Oh, sit down here, all right, sit down. I said, well, I think it's kind of, I'm still nervous. No, that's kind of funny because I don't have any hair. He's like, we'll take care of this. Take off your shirt. Take off my shirt? To this point, I'm thinking maybe I'd roll up a sleeve and then take off some arm hair or something. Take off your shirt. So I took off my shirt. And I'm not exactly a physique of the Greek god or anything. And she says, put your arms out. All right, put my arms out. And she reached into a desk drawer and pulled out a 39-cent single-bladed big disposable razor and proceeded to shave the hair off my armpits and chest, collecting them in a little plastic sack. And it was at that moment I said, screw this. You can take your $69,000 job, you can take your credit card, you can take your credit card, and you can shove it because I am not going to work for someone who takes 2 years of my labor and talent and then treats me like a criminal. That's how I ended up. Once that happened, I gave up my IT career. I was already volunteering for Oregon NORML, but I went full-time with Oregon NORML. I eventually got hired by National NORML. I did a podcast for National NORML that I turned into a live show, and now I'm done independent with that live show, and I'm trying to bring the growing truth about cannabis to the biggest audience I possibly can, and so that's why I'm here. Now, so I want to just talk a little bit, because our exhibit here is the rise and fall of Prohibition, and we think a lot about alcohol prohibition and how it led to the rise of gangs and violence and bootleggers and speakeasies and all of this, and we kind of use that to analogize marijuana prohibition, but guess what? It's not a very good analogy. Under alcohol prohibition, you could possess alcohol. It was illegal to sell it, make it, or transport it, but if you had a bottle, Not so with marijuana. You got some weed, they're going to throw you in jail. During alcohol prohibition, you could get a medical alcohol prescription in any state. And many people drank through those medical alcohol prescriptions. So many so that one particular pharmacist who had one of the few government licenses to write medical alcohol prescriptions got pretty rich. His name was Walgreen. Remember Walgreens Pharmacy? That's where it started, medical alcohol prescriptions. And another thing that's different about alcohol prohibition versus marijuana prohibition is up until the 18th Amendment was passed, there were huge companies, Pabst and Miller, and all these guys you can see in the display, these big breweries that were already major companies. There was already a culture of acceptance of alcohol use. There were already social mores about when you use it, how you use it, who you use it with. And with marijuana, while we do have some of those mores and some of those cultural things, it's not mainstream, it's not really well known. So we're asking people to do something they've never experienced. At least with alcohol prohibition, when it ended, people can say, oh yeah, we remember what it used to be like when there were saloons. Now we're asking them what it would be like with pot shops, and they've never seen that before, and they're scared. But I'm here to tell you that the only way that legalizing marijuana is scary is if you think marijuana doesn't exist now. There are currently 27 million people above the age of 18 smoking marijuana at least once every year in this country. That's more tokers than Texas. There are more people smoking pot in America than there is the entire population of Texas. You know, they say don't mess with Texas, don't mess with tokers. There are 17 million people who are using marijuana every month. Do you know how many people there are in the National Rifle Association? 4 million. How come we can never do anything without offending the NRA, but when it comes to locking tokers up 17 million strong doesn't carry any political weight? Well, not anymore, it doesn't. Now we've got that political weight. And there are another 3 million people in this country who smoke marijuana every single day. And I'm one of them. So it's not a matter of, oh, should we legalize marijuana? Should we legalize marijuana? The problem is these prohibitionists don't understand you cannot repeal the law of supply and demand. As long as we want it, someone will supply it. And that it should be an economic truth that people on both the left and right side of the aisle should both be able to agree to. We're not talking about if we legalize or should we legalize. We're talking about who should benefit from the existing marijuana market. Criminals or taxpayers? Now there are a lot of scare tactics out there. In a lot of ways they try to scare us. They want to try to scare your grandparents, scare your mom and dad about how bad legalization would be. And Keith already mentioned one of the biggest ones is something I call WATSI. What about the children? WATSI. What about the children? What about the children? Well, first of all, if you've seen all these little kids that are benefiting from cannabis oil for their epilepsy, I say, what about those children? Let's help those children. When I see an entire generation of kids doped up on Adderall and other hard pharmaceuticals when they can replace with cannabis, I say, what about those children? When I know for a fact over the past 3 decades when the Center for the Columbia Addiction and Substance Abuse people, CASA, does their survey, and another group monitoring the future, a government survey, over the past 30 years have asked kids aged 12 to 17 if it's easy or fairly easy to get marijuana, and that number has never gone below 81%. It's been as high as 90. High school seniors. And so, when 81 to 90% of the high school seniors say it's easy to get pot, I say, what about those children? And how about we check them for ID? How about we put the pot in the adult-only store instead of behind the locker room at school? And when parents get scared about this, I would say, look, 44% of all kids know a drug dealer in their school. What's on the menu? 91% of the time, that drug dealer has marijuana on the menu. 26% of the time, that drug dealer has cocaine on the menu. 6% of the time, he's got cigarettes on the menu. And 1% of the time, he's got alcohol on the menu. Because there's no profit in being a tequila dealer. So don't let them fight about this. Now, there could be some scare that in post-legalization, maybe teen use might go up a little bit. I say don't let that frighten you. Don't let that statistic sit in a vacuum. It's not whether more kids use pot, it's does harm go up. If those kids are switching out keg stands to pot, if those kids are not drunk driving, if those kids are using Adderall, there might be a difference. National Survey on Drug Use and Health goes all the way back to 1979. Quizzes kids aged 12 to 17 on how many of them have used pot annually. Back in 1979, it was the peak of child use. 1 out of 8 kids said they had tried pot. By 1992, that was down to 1 out of 22. Today, it's about 1 out of 14. So today, we're about halfway in between the worst it's ever been and the least it's ever been. I'm not afraid of that moving a little bit so long as harm doesn't go up. And I know 1979, the year of post-use, I know. Disco, bell bottoms, but I don't think we can blame that on the weed. Or can we? You guys have some good weed. Another scare that's out there is the other one I call smuff. Smuff. Stone mayhem on the freeway. Smuff. Well, like Keith said, it's not as if we haven't already been driving. But another thing that people fear is that when you legalize, more new tokers will use, and there might be a greater chance that there's more people behind the wheel out there. Well, we've got some preliminary numbers from Washington and Colorado. In both states, they participate in what's known as a, I can't remember the term, but the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration puts on this safe driving extra patrols between the middle of August and Labor Day weekend. And their enhanced patrols, the DUI patrols, they took place in both Washington and Colorado. In Washington, they took place when they took the numbers from King County and the one that's right next door. The 2 counties where Seattle is the big area. There were something like 374 DUI arrests in 2012. There was 294 in 2013. There were fewer DUI arrests the year after they legalized. That time frame just happens to match the weekend of Seattle Hemp Fest. So you had 200,000 people at the first Hemp Fest where smoking pot was legal for all adults, and they had fewer DUI arrests. Same numbers for the state of Colorado, when they took a look at the Denver metro area, that huge metroplex of Denver, out of 357 DUI arrests they had during that 2-week period. 13 for marijuana. 13. I'm not trying to say that smoking and driving is not a bad thing. You shouldn't get impaired and get behind the wheel, but according to this latest study that I saw from Dr. Gopal Lee, who estimated the odds risk of someone who's a drug user getting into a fatal crash, it's about a 1.81 to 1 risk if you're a pot smoker. It's about 1.93 if you use penicillin. It's about 3.47 if you use anything like Adderall. It's about 4.57 if you're using heavy narcotics, like Xanax and stuff like that. And it's 13.641 if it's alcohol. So yeah, 1.81 is a risk, but it's the lowest risk of all the drugs out there. And another scare tactic our opponents have is this fear of big marijuana. It'll be just like big tobacco. Why? They'll come in and they'll try to sell the kids, and they'll make cartoon logos like Joe Camel, and they'll lie about their product. Oh, big marijuana. But guess what? Big marijuana exists now. It's just called Sinaloa Juarez and Gulf Cartel. That's what it's called. There are units of big marijuana. And this big marijuana, when it gets into a dispute, doesn't take its dispute to court. It cuts the heads off its rivals, buries their bodies in acid vats, and dumps the heads on the rush hour freeway traffic. That's what today's big marijuana does. I would prefer the big marijuana that parts kids, creates jobs, and pays taxes. What this really comes down to in a lot of cases is just rank bigotry. They don't like our kind. A lot of times when I debate like Kevin Sabet and some of these anti-guys, they'll say it's not like alcohol prohibition because, alcohol, we have a culture of alcohol. It's in our culture for so long. We have a history with alcohol. I say, really? So, hemp going back to 1611, medical going back to 1848, and recreational going back to Louis Armstrong. That's not long enough yet. That's not enough culture yet. I say this is our time, and the way I can tell it's our time is because now I'm seeing politicians saying the same things about marijuana that I was writing on protest signs 10 years ago. I saw, and you didn't see Representative Steve Cohen from Tennessee and my Congressman Earl Blumenauer from Oregon grilling the deputy drug czar who could not say that marijuana was less harmful than methamphetamine. He could not admit that marijuana was less harmful than heroin. And Jerry Polis from Colorado earlier, he took down the head of the DEA, Michelle Lenhart, asking the same questions. You can't say that marijuana is safer than methamphetamine. I'm seeing in Maryland, in New State, we got 3 Democratic candidates for governor who are fighting over who's more pro-marijuana. In Pennsylvania, they just had a Democratic gubernatorial debate where one guy, John Hanger, he says, I'm for full legalization. It'll take 300,000 votes to win this primary. This issue will give me 200,000. The other 5 candidates, Democratic candidates, all said, well, I don't support legalization, but I'm for medical decrim. And the only one Democratic candidate who did not support the marijuana reform said she didn't support medical marijuana because it's very, very important that the FCC regulate our drugs. Yes, that's what she said. I have the YouTube video. We have got, in addition to Pennsylvania, I gotta find my number, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Maine. There is a Senate candidate in Maine, Heather Missouri, I think her name is. I don't know if it's Maryland. Heather Missouri? Is she Maryland? Maryland. She's the Maryland one. I can't remember the woman in Maine who's running for Senate. She would be our first pro-marijuana senator. That would be amazing. We've got so much going in our favor at this point. And I just want to encourage you all to spread the truth, to tell the truth, to be honest about yourself. My friends in the LGBT movement say that this is a lot about
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it.
All right, well, that was footage from the, audio anyway, from the Prohibition campaign debate thing out there in Minnesota. Thanks for sticking with us here at Toker Talk Radio. Coming up tonight at 8 o'clock, live Herb Thrasher Flower Hour, 8 p.m. Pacific, so check it out. I'm Brian the Red for Radical Russ and everybody here at 420 Radio. Take care of each other, Tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you